Hello and welcome to the Calmcast, a time to feel calm and think clearly. I'm Claire Downham, the Queen of Calm, a transformational life coach. I was a burnt out head teacher who finally made the journey to calm after years of trying, and I want to prevent you from having to do the same. The Calmcast is a series of short explorations, gently guiding you back to your natural state, which is calm and clarity. Just listen like you would listen to music, with an open mind and curiosity. There's nothing else to do. Now let's relax into today's episode. So today's exploration, from first impressions to that feeling of overwhelm, that can seem like a really short journey, can't it? Because quite often we don't notice how quickly we've gone from a circumstance, from seeing something happening in the world, to a well padded out story of what that means. And it is the meaning making that creates the overwhelm, is not the thing that happens in the world. And I'm going to tell a little personal story here of when I really experienced this a lot. And only now, when looking back, do I realise how much overwhelm I created in my life with this particular situation. So after I split from my husband in 2013, I did a lot of online dating. And I guess that was the point in my life I felt the most anxious, I would say, the most overwhelmed, the time when my head probably felt the fullest. Because if I sent a message and somebody didn't reply within a time period made up by me, that meant something huge. That meant they didn't like me anymore. I made it mean an awful lot about me and who I was. I felt the rejection of that. I felt not good enough because of it. It was a whole catalogue of thoughts that I made up in my head in relation to one little thing, which was somebody not replying to a message. And we all do it all the time, don't we? But for me, it created a really quite unpleasant feeling, which at the time I thought was coming from somebody not replying to a message, because that's the state of mind that I was in at the time. And now I know that I created that overwhelmed feeling. But it's really easy to do. It's really easy to read the lack of response to a message. It's really easy to read the look on somebody's face, somebody's behavior, as meaning something, often about us. That is just a really easy thing to do, and a very human thing to do. You know, it's often said that humans are meaning-making machines. We're trying to make sense of the world all the time. And the easiest thing to do when we're trying to make sense of the world is to fill a gap with something that we perhaps already believe about the world, and make something make sense to us that doesn't really make sense at all. And it could look like there's a big piece of work to do on ourselves to sort this out, to not experience that anymore, to stop ourselves going into those stories and making them up. You know, that we could need to have some therapy, or we could need to do some journaling, or some affirmations or whatever else to help us stop meaning making. But really, the most simple thing to do is to know that you're doing it. To perhaps have a continual awareness of the fact that as a human being, you are always going to be trying to make meaning of things that are happening around you. And just knowing that that is a human trait, that is a human truth, that is something that every single human being is doing all day, every day. Just knowing that can be really helpful. And you won't always see it in the moment when it happens because you're human and you will get caught up in those stories. But each and every time you do see it, you do notice, oh, I've made up a big story there and I feel unpleasant as a consequence of that. Every single time you notice, you can naturally fall back into calm. That overwhelmed feeling can naturally dissipate. All there needs to be is an awareness that that's what you're doing. And the way to travel towards that place of awareness is to just keep looking in this direction towards the truth of how human beings create their experience, towards the fact that when you are feeling something that feels really strong in your body, when you're feeling an emotional feeling, you are feeling thought in the moment. You're not feeling the thing that happened. That has no power over you. And that is actually really empowering, is to know that somebody not replying to a text, the look on somebody's face, or somebody's behavior really cannot do anything to you. It can't. It can't do anything to you. And that, to me, feels like a relief because I spent so many years, not just in online dating, but in many aspects of my life, being buffeted back and forth by my circumstances, feeling one way, or it seemed by my circumstances, feeling one way because of one circumstance, and then thinking I felt a different way because the circumstance improved or got worse or whatever else. And that was exhausting because that led to me trying to control my circumstances to make myself feel okay. The good news is you don't have to control your circumstances. You don't have to control yourself. It's just helpful. I'm not going to say you have to. I nearly said that. You just have to know. You don't just have to know. It is helpful to know that the overwhelmed feeling that you are feeling is not coming from the first impression, the thing that's happening in the world. It is coming from the story that you are creating around it. It's coming from thought in the moment. And because you are alive and conscious, you will always be doing that. But when you know you're doing it, that is truly, truly transformational. When you really know, not just up here in your head, not just intellectually, but when you have a deep knowing that this is a thing that human beings do. Human beings take the outside circumstance and make it into something, make a story up. It's like that game that when I was a teacher, we used to play a game with children where you would give the first line of a story and then they would add line by line. You'd go around the circle maybe and get the children to help teach that kind of story building technique. But all of that, we go from one stimulus. Sometimes we'd play the game actually with a stimulus. We'd put an object in the middle of the circle and the children would look at the object and then tell the story of that object. But that is exactly what we are doing inside our heads. There's an object in the world. There is a thing happening. And then there's lots of little voices. Appropriately, it is a bit like children's voices, isn't it? Going round and round in our heads, creating that overwhelmed feeling. And you know what's lovely about this is that it is true. There's nobody not doing it. You're no different from anyone else because you're doing it. But just the magic of knowing you're doing it is unbelievably powerful. Just knowing that that is what you are doing. You are a meaning-making machine, making meaning, making stories all day long. And that is just the truth. It's the truth of being human. And there aren't many of those about. They're certainly not those stories that you're making up in your head. So again, just as always, get curious about this. Start noticing those stories. Every little story that you catch in its creation will be helpful in bringing you back to that place of calm. Thank you so much for listening. There's nothing to do now but bring some awareness to how this is working out in your life. Listen regularly to experience longer and longer periods of calm. This has been the Calmcast with Claire Downham, Queen of Calm. Take care and keep listening.